Okay, so we're starting good evening, everybody. This is Diana Jung. Thank you for coming to the At-Large Candidates Forum. My name is Diana Jung. I'm the founding member of GMAACC, Greater Malden Asian American Community Coalition. I welcome you here. Mabel, could you show the first slide, please? We've invited all 6 candidates and they've
Diana, sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
I think we're still waiting for Karen, right?
Yeah, yes, we are.
Okay. So I'm waiting, I don't see Karen on the attendees list. Just give me 1 second. Oh, yes, there you are. Okay, all right, we're all set.
Okay, want me to start again?
And Mabel, you're not sharing the full screen.
Oh, hi, thank you. Okay,
Mabel, you're not sharing the full screen. You're sharing the presenter's view.
Okay, I'm going to start again. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for joining us at the Council at Large Candidates Forum. My name is Diana Jung, and I'm the founding member and current vice president of the Greater Malden Asian American Community Coalition. Mabel, next slide, please. I'm going to have tonight's translators, Anna Say, Terry Yin, Gigi Wen, to introduce themselves and to give instructions for those of our participants who need translation services. Anna, could you please begin?
Thank you so much, Diana. Good evening, everyone. I'm Anna Say. I'll be your Cantonese interpreter for the meeting tonight. 大家好，我係 Anna， 歡迎大家參與摩頓不分區市議員候選人論壇。依家你會見到個圖標，咁你撳落去揀 Cantonese， 咁你就會成功進入咗廣東話翻譯頻道噶啦。如果你用手機嘅話咧，咁你要撳嗰3個點，再撳入去揀更多，咁亦都會成功進入咗廣東話嘅翻譯頻道啦。一陣間見 ，Thank you so much。All set.
Okay, Terry, please.
Thank you, Diana. Hi, my name is Terry Ying. I'll be your Mandarin interpreter. 大家好，我是 Terry， 我是你的普通话翻译。待会呢，你在屏幕下方就会看到一个地球的图标，你选择地球的图标，选择 Mandarin， 你就可以进入到国语的频道了。如果你是用手机或者是平板电脑上的话呢，可以选择屏幕下方的3个点，然后再选择语言的选项，也可以进入到 Mandarin， 也就是国语的频道。好，谢谢大家。Thank you, Diana.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Gigi, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gigi Nguyen. I am the Vietnamese interpreter today. Xin chào mọi người. Tên tôi là Gigi và hôm nay tôi sẽ là người thông dịch tiếng Việt cho quý vị. Và quý vị có thể chọn kênh tiếng Việt để được nghe thông dịch bằng tiếng Việt. Xin cảm ơn. All set.
Okay. Thank you, translators. Mabel, next slide, please. The Council at Large Candidates Forum is a joint effort of the Asian Community Development Corporation and Greater Malden Asian American Community Coalition. The Asian Community Development Corporation, also ACDC, is a nonprofit organization that serves Asian American immigrant populations in the Greater Boston area. ACDC aims to protect Greater Boston's neighborhoods from rapid luxury development, to preserve our rich history and culture, and to transform spaces by bringing peoples of all backgrounds together to live, work, and play. The Greater Malden Asian American Community Coalition, also known as GMAACC, is a community-led nonprofit that builds power with Asian American community members of the Greater Malden area. GMAACC's work includes providing direct services, strengthening coalitions, and organizing to advocate for community well-being and equity. Our programs include youth empowerment, ping pong for elders, vaccine outreach, and gambling awareness. Next slide. Excuse me. GMAACC and ACDC collaborate on various community engagement activities. We've worked on Get Out the Vote activities, the 2020 census, community building workshops, and over the years, many candidates forums in Malden. We hope tonight's forum will provide good information and inspire you to vote on November 2nd. Next slide, please. Now it is my honor to introduce tonight's moderator, Leverett Wing. We are very happy to have Leverett as our moderator. He has served in that capacity many times. Leverett is the executive director of the Commonwealth Seminar. Founded in 2003, the seminar's mission is to open doors of government to everyone by working with, training underserved communities to help them better access and influence decision makers at all levels of government. Prior to joining the seminar in 2015, Leverett led the national Washington, D.C. based Asian and Pacific Islander American vote and was the first permanent executive director of the Massachusetts Asian American Commission. He's served as a member of Governor Deval Patrick's core transition team and State Treasurer Deborah Goldberg's transition team. Leverett is also a past co-chair of the Massachusetts Democratic Party's Diversity Outreach Committee and has sat on the Finance and National Leadership Committees for a number of state and national political campaigns. He is a past board member of ACDC and currently sits on the boards of Eastern Bank, Boston Children's Museum, WGBH TV Radio, Boston Harbor Now, Joslin Diabetes Center, and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Do you sleep, Leverett? Well, anyway. Leverett has been recognized by Get Connected as one of their GK 100, honoring the 100 most influential people of color in Boston. He's also a recipient of the prestigious Good Guy Award from the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus, only the second Asian American to receive that award. He's also been honored by ACDC, which offered its Inspiration Award, and by Chinese Culture Connection, which offered the Excellence in Diversity and Inclusion Award to Leverett for his work in empowering and educating the community regarding public political engagement. Sorry about that. He's a graduate of Tufts University and Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and is a longtime Celtics fan. So take it away, Leverett. Thank you. You can close the, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Diana. Thanks very much. And thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you to Greater Malden Asian American Community Coalition and ACDC for coordinating and sponsoring this event. I'm excited to be just a small part of the evening. As mentioned, the forum is going to be translated into Mandarin, Cantonese, and Vietnamese. It's also going to be live streamed by Urban Media Arts and is also being recorded for future viewing on Urban Media Arts YouTube channel. As for the ground rules for this evening, each candidate will have 5 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes to answer each subsequent question. There'll be a 30-second heads up, which is going to be held up by Mabel in terms of her side, and a 10-second verbal notice, which I will offer. If a candidate goes over their allotted time, I will politely but firmly ask each candidate to stop, and we reserve the option to mute each candidate, although clearly we prefer not to do so, but it's the power of Zoom. So each candidate will answer the questions asked in rotation, beginning alphabetically. So meaning the first candidate, in this case, Karen Cologne Hayes, will address the audience first, then will become the last candidate to answer the next question. This process will continue as each candidate moves up in the queue. In terms of the audience, thank you all for being here with us this evening. It's a beautiful night, literally the calm after the storm, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy summer schedules to join us tonight. We're on webinar mode, so you'll be able to chat with the participants and with the hosts. And if you have any individual questions, please submit them there. If we don't have time to get to them this evening, we will ask the candidates to get back to you individually. That way you will have your questions answered as best as possible. As mentioned, the forum will be streamed live by Urban Media Arts if you missed anything, and is being recorded. And we have a hard stop, I'm being told, at 8:30. So we will get everybody off and we'll be able to eat a little bit of a late dinner, but we will have dinner nonetheless. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to all the candidates for participating this evening. It really does mean a lot to us and to our community that you have chosen and made time to join us. So thank you so much. And I guess we will begin right away with opening statements because we are on a bit of a tight schedule. So as mentioned, we'll begin with Karen Colon-Hayes, who will have 5 minutes for her opening statement. And then we'll be followed by Brian DeLacy and so forth. Oh,
May I just ask a
Councilor
procedural
Spadafore,
question?
did you have a question?
Yeah, can I just ask a procedural question?
Yes.
So I tend to talk fast. With the translation, do we just talk or do we have to, so we don't, there's no pausing or waiting for?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. These, yeah, the three translators we have, I've worked with many times in the past. They are the best in the business. They actually
Perfect.
go and they do it simultaneously.
All right, perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Karen,
Okay,
if you'd
we
like
all
to-
set?
if you'd like to proceed. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you that was very explicit direction, so I'm feeling really good about that. And good evening, Malden, and hello to my friends at GMAACC and ACDC and UMA. Thank you for providing this forum tonight with translation and video, so everyone will be able to access this very important information on our candidates for office. My name is Karen Colon-Hayes, and I'm here to make Malden more inclusive, forward-thinking, and resilient. So together we will rise. I am running for councilor at large because I've decided all my life to help others. That's just been a part of who I am. I'm a daughter of immigrants, and they've instilled in us values of hard work and social justice. It's because of their guidance that I have worked in both managerial and director level positions in the field of social services and justice. And because of their guidance, I have learned and worked in the director of psychiatry research at actually Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which I heard someone else over here had worked there, and the business manager at family counseling and guidance centers, and most recently, the director of human services and community outreach for the city of Malden for the last 9 years, which gives me over 25 years experience running businesses and managing large budgets. In Malden, I work to improve the lives of residents as the human services director and work to improve our senior center. I've worked to strengthen our education system, our youth development and employment, and bolstered the voice of our community organizations. Now, I want to work as your counselor at large to tackle all the issues I listed above and more. Malden needs collaborative leadership. And if my past experience indicate anything, it's that I include all voices and get results. This is what our city needs to rise. I also have the unique experience of working to strengthen our community both in and out of city government for the past 15 years. I've led initiatives to help our seniors gain access to health, cultural, financial information and activities, as well as find summer jobs for youth of all abilities. I helped found the Malden Warming Center to address the issues of homelessness. And last March, at the beginning of the pandemic, several community members reached out to ask how they could help. I brought these residents together, and we formed a mutual aid group called Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors that provided crisis level response for Malden's most vulnerable. My focus has always been building relationships. Feeling safe is essential to a neighborhood, and by knowing your neighbors, you can accomplish this, which is why we founded Friends of Oak Grove, Inc., or Fuji, whose mission is to improve relationships in our neighborhood with community service projects and events. Our city, along with the rest of the world, is facing unprecedented times, health, financial, and racial crisis. Countless neighbors have lost their jobs because of an unstable economy. Food insecurity is at an all-time high, and many are facing evictions. And with our recent uptick in crime and homelessness, we need to help our police officers by providing them with additional mental health and substance abuse resources to make their job easier. These times call for strong, forward-thinking, and courageous leaders who think out of the box. Leaders who have relationships with our neighbors, our business owners, and community organizations. Leaders who aren't afraid to take on challenges and make tough decisions so that we all rise together. Most importantly, leaders who listen to and act on all the voices of our community. Our local government struggles to reflect that diversity in Malden. Our city government should provide equitable resources to underserved populations that would promote leadership, new and innovative business developments, academic excellence, economic stability, and a sense of belonging in Malden. I am running because I want to build a more resilient Malden with new opportunities for our communities, schools, and economy. We should leave no one behind. I want to build a Malden where everyone has a seat at the table because together we rise. I am Karen Cologne Hayes, and I hope to earn one of your 3 votes for City Councilor at Large by mail or in person on Tuesday, November 2nd. For more information, you can follow us on social media at KCH for Malden. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much,
Mhm.
Karen. Right on time as well. So thanks very much. Up next, we have Brian DeLacy. Mr. Lacey,
Hi
you
there,
have
my name-
5 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Brian DeLacy. Thank you very much for organizing this forum. It really is fabulous to get candidates engaged with residents and voters. It really is fundamental to our democracy and to making Malden better, which has long been my concern. By way of brief background, my wife and I moved here back in the early 90s. And at the time we had 1 child and 2 more were born here into Malden. And in subsequent years, they eventually all graduated from Malden High School. The reason that we originally moved to Malden was we were attracted actually to the diversity of the environment. My wife is of Chinese descent. Her mother is from Southeast Asia. And my father-in-law was from mainland China. And so for us, the diversity of the culture and the life experience was really something that we look forward to. And ever since we've been here, our children thrived and they loved the multicultural education that they got. And it gave them an opportunity to go on to higher education and really enjoy the world in different ways and in a truly rich cultural environment that they now all operate in. Personally, my background is in a couple of different areas. I worked in social work for a period of time. I worked in business consulting for a period of time. And I worked extensively in computers in and around software development, management information systems. And I've also worked in higher education, specifically in the area of business. While in Malden, I've been a strong advocate for things like openness and transparency. And I was one of the first people to actually video record and share various committee meetings that were taking place on the city council. And subsequently, that really has become routine. So in terms of, I'd just like to follow up on what Karen had to say. I really think the crux of the opportunity here is about leadership. And it's about leadership of the city and the government. And leadership strongly relies on the larger population of people in and around the city. So I'd just like to indicate that I'm always available. My number and email and other forms of contact information will be widely available to you after this event. And I'd certainly welcome any comments or questions or inquiries. So in closing, my name is Brian DeLacy, and I really, really, really would appreciate your vote for a councilor at large. I think Malden's at a turning point. This is an important watershed moment in our democracy, and I'd just like to join in it with you in making it better for all of us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mr. DeLacy. And kind of building on that, if candidates would like to put either their website or Facebook or any contact information they would like into the chat, that can be shared directly with all of the participants. So that is something. Please feel free to do that. Up next, we have Roberto DeMarco. Mr. DeMarco, you'll have 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much, Leverett. I appreciate your time here today. And thank you, candidates. First and foremost, thank you to ACDC and to GMAACC. Forums like this are what it's all about. It's information dissemination. It's about getting the community information about who is involved and what information is out there for them to select their next generation of leaders. And thank you all to the volunteers. It's important that we continue the trend of democracy. I couldn't agree more with the candidates who have already spoken. We are at a turning point. We're at a turning point because what we really need to do is we need to come together. You know, I have been born and raised in this city. I have seen the city grow and expand. I have seen the city become something that we should all be extremely proud of. Malden is the most diverse of cities. It ranks in the top nationwide. It is a place where we welcome people of all economic levels. We welcome people of all backgrounds, of all ethnicities, of all gender identities, of all races, creeds, religions. We open our hearts and our neighborhoods to them, and we welcome them into our neighborhoods in ways that the rest of the country can learn from. Last week, I had the privilege of attending the dedication of the new City Hall chambers for the City Council that was rededicated to Herbie Jackson. And Malden did that back in the 90s. They did it back in 1978 when Herbie died. We did it again. Herbie was elected back in the 1940s. That's a source of pride for us. I am an attorney here in Malden by way of background. I was born here at Malden Hospital. I attended all 12 years here in the city. I attended college, came back here to Malden, raised my family here. We have 4 children who have attended Malden Public Schools and then went on to higher education in various places. I opened my law firm, and that law firm has defended Malden residents in a variety of places. We have created jobs. We have created housing. We have defended the elderly. We have defended homeowners. We have shut down illegal programs. We have sued the city of Malden when it was necessary, and we have supported the city of Malden when it was necessary. That's what it's about. It's about civic involvement. And this is the next step. I've been training to be a city leader my entire life. And I would appreciate the vote and support of my fellow residents here in Malden in taking this step and being a city councilor at large. As you look around the city and we listen to the dialogue happening, one of the most troubling aspects is that we tend to see division growing. What we really need to see is us coming together. And I would encourage all of us listening to this podcast, Zoom tonight, to consider the ways in which we can reach out to one another and the ways in which the candidates can expand their outreach, and we can build consensus. I want to cut back on the vitriol. I want to cut back on the attacks. And I want us to find ways to expand the table, take down the fences. That's the way to build a better Malden. And so my campaign is based upon that. I think that the more we build neighbors, the more we find ways to reach out, we're going to find that our residents are all about the same thing. It's about building better roads, fixing our sidewalks, building better parks, and building a better government. Thank you, and I would ask you a vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. DeMarco. Up next, we have John Matheson. Mr. Matheson. Thanks very much.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Leverett. Thank you, Diana. Thank you to Malden Urban Arts. Thank you to GMAACC and ACDC and everyone listening here today, hoping to educate themselves before they vote. I think that's a great thing. So thank you for the forum. My name is John Matheson, and I'm running for councilor at large. I was born and raised and educated here in Malden. Like Roberto, I attended all 12 years of my primary education here in Malden in the public schools. I then went on to get a law degree, which I got from Rutgers University, and a master's degree in business. I've been a practicing attorney for these past 20 years right here in Malden. And like Roberto, I've done so ethically and with a mind towards helping people. You might remember me from my service on the city council prior to now. I've served as Ward 3 counselor, counselor at large. I served as council president. I also served as president of the Bread of Life when it expanded to serve 1 million meals a year to those in need. And when it was moving its building, I aided in that process. In 2019, I ran for mayor, and it was a tremendous honor of mine to receive 4 out of 10 Malden voters who chose me to be their mayor. It's an honor I can't describe and a gratitude that I'll always carry with me. I love my hometown, and I can't think of a better way to give back than to once again offer my service. Too often, new people seek political office as a way to gain popularity within their political circle. And for example, when it was popular last year to defund the police, a term that people don't use when they're asking for votes, there were several attempts here in Malden, including one motion to cut bulletproof vests by 50%. That one really struck me. These are the bulletproof vests that actually keep our officers safe and alive. I believe that the public safety officials that we have, like our military, are worthy of our respect. I've never been an establishment candidate. My campaigns have always been supported by everyday Maldonians. And frankly, that's my number one priority, is the people of Malden and their safety. So I want to be very clear that I support a very fully funded police department that has the resources and the discretion to keep Malden safe and all our community members safe. As for reimagining police, which is a different spin that you hear this year, I think we've always been open to that, especially here in Malden. Programs that bridge police to the community have always been funded here in Malden. This year, you may note that there are 4 vacancies in the council. That's an unusual number of vacancies. And this means that this year, more than most, we need experience, not personal agendas. My goal in the coming term is to get the council working again as a body that deliberates respectfully and intelligently. I will promote public safety of every kind, and I'll bring greater attention to quality of life issues like repaving roads and caring for our parks. I will dedicate all of my experience to bring us back together as a community and to promote the idea of service over self. If you agree, I would greatly appreciate one of your 3 votes for councilor at large. And again, thank you very, very much for this opportunity. It's great to be here. It's a tremendous honor. And I'm John Matheson. Thank you very much for your vote and your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Matheson. Very quickly, are folks able, I saw it in the chat, are folks able to see Ms. Hayes on her screen? I know she's off screen now, but perhaps as panelists, we can see her, but the general public, general attendees may not be able to. So maybe just 1 or 2 folks, if you could chime in the chat. Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Maureen. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have Carrie McDonald. Mr. McDonald, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be with you all today. I'm Carrie McDonald, candidate for Malden City Council at large, and thank you to ACDC and GMAACC for this forum, for the work that you do in our community and your programs and your advocacy. And I am a proud GMAACC member, so I'm glad to be here today. Malden has always been a community that welcomes all types of people, and especially immigrants. And the Asian community here is such a big part of our story. It contributes so much to our city, our food scene, our neighborhoods. And there's so much diversity within the Asian community here: Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Indian, Southeast Asian. I was so pleased to be invited to talk with you today because Asian and Asian American voices are really important ones in this election. You know, in the past year, I've realized how much we look out for each other in Malden. The pandemic has been so hard for all of us. And like many others, my family has had personal losses and impossible choices on jobs and schools, kids doing a year of school at the dining room table, holidays on Zoom like this, the best we can. And when it's so easy to be isolated, it means the world to be a part of this diverse community. Teachers that go the extra mile, neighbors who bring meals, friends who check in to make sure you're okay. Across this city, we've pulled together to volunteer, donate, advocate, and help each other however we can. And I'm running for city council to bring that sense of neighbor to neighbor connection to City Hall through the pandemic and beyond. I decided to run because I love this city. And COVID-19 has shown us how much we need each other. It's a critical election. We want this to be an inclusive, dynamic, imaginative community where people can afford to raise a family, buy a house, grow old in place, where anyone can get a great education, launch a career, or start a business, where parks and libraries bring people together, and where everyone, no matter who you are, can be safe and get help when you're in crisis. A little about me. We moved to the area just before my oldest was born, and now we live in the Faulkner neighborhood. I didn't grow up in Malden, but I do have family roots here. And like many Maldonians, the first time we came here, it just felt like home. Professionally, my education is in economics and management. I started my career as a state budget and policy aide, where I helped pass and implement a major education reform package. I'm currently a nonprofit executive, overseeing day-to-day operations and strategic planning for a national organization with hundreds of staff and a $30 million operating budget. I'm a community volunteer, a Malden Public Schools parent, an active member of First Parish Church. Last year, I helped organize the nonpartisan People's Budget Survey, and I'm on the Mayor's Advisory Group for the Obama Policing Pledge. So my experience gives me the skills to work hard for our city starting on day one. And as a first-time candidate, I do bring a fresh perspective to the city's challenges and opportunities. So as the city councilor at large, I'll be focused on three core things. Number one, getting the basics right. Number two, empowering voices of our community. And number three, taking actions on citywide issues with citywide plans. First, getting the basics right is the foundation for doing any job well, keeping our parks in good shape, our streets paved, maintaining crosswalks, removing lead pipes, and improving communication with residents. And this really matters for quality of life. Number two, empowering community voices is essential for developing the inclusive leadership our city needs. The huge range of folks who live here is what so many of us love about Malden, and that means it takes more work for leaders to bring that community together, make it easy for people to be a part of decision-making through inclusive meetings, virtual meetings, improved language translation is really important. And I support creating a comprehensive equity plan for Malden and better partnerships for language classes and immigration services. And third, since I'm running to represent the entire city, I want to make sure we have good citywide plans for citywide issues. That includes green space. We need a Malden climate action plan like our neighbors have in towns nearby. We need plans for affordable, attainable housing to address the skyrocketing costs to rent or to buy, helping our seniors age in place if you have homes, improving partnerships with our senior services and investing in the senior center, plans for community safety and public health, and for education and economic opportunity. I hope you'll visit my website at mcdonaldformalden.com to learn more about my campaign. You can download translated materials in Chinese and Vietnamese, as well as in Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, and Arabic. And I'd always love to hear from you. This campaign isn't about me, it's about us. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. Thank you to GMAACC for this chance to talk to you today, and for our translators. Let's make that neighbor-to-neighbor connection even stronger, and I ask for one of your at-large votes on November 2nd for Carrie McDonald to Malden City Council at large. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. And last, but that's certainly not least, we have Councillor Craig Spatafor. Mr. Spatafor, you have your 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Leverett. Thank you to ACDC, GMAACC, UMA, all the candidates, and all the residents. 5 minutes is not a long time, but I will certainly try to rush into it in terms of my opening statement. First, I'd like to thank, like I said, GMAACC for this organization. I would also like to take 2 seconds to wish my grandmother, who's 95 years old today, happy birthday. My name is Craig Spadafora. I am a current city councilor at large. I was born and raised in Malden, went through Malden schools. Lucky enough to not leave the Boston area for college. I got my undergrad and graduate degree, both from local universities here, and I work for a financial company. I have 3 children, all in the Malden school system, and I have a wife who's a nurse who actually now works in the public school system. So pretty involved in the community on multiple levels. But I cannot help but look at all of you and think what lies ahead and what can be accomplished together. I also want to recognize the members of the community, these individuals who run the city on a day-to-day basis. We owe them our debt of thanks and gratitude to make Malden run. Many of them are working right now, whether it's the DPW this morning, cleaning water out of basements or streets, or making sure the streets are clean, or the police officers and the firefighters racing to save somebody's lives, and to the teachers and the nurses that are currently on the front line of COVID. And as always, I've always been speaking to all the residents of Malden. And as going out in the community the last several months and knocking on doors and talking to people at local community events, I've heard from young people excited to carve out their place in the city's future and eager to proceed new pathways to opportunity. I heard from those who are new to Malden and sometimes our country, like my friend Yasin, who was so very much wanted to feel welcome as they begin a new life in our city. I heard from lifelong residents who work hard every day to stay in this community, and they want it to be affordable, but they also don't want us to forget our path. And they also want to see Malden grow and evolve, but in a very, very diverse manner. I also heard from those who recognize that there is a climate crisis happening right now and asked us to respond both boldly and with urgency. I heard from craftsmen and local artists who have that creative spirit that makes Malden fun and unique. And I've heard from people in every neighborhood, whether they're homeowners or renters, who want good jobs, safe neighborhoods, and a healthy environment in which to raise and live their family. Sometimes these stories do not always complement each other. Often they do not. One thing I know is that we make better decisions. We show respect for all our perspectives. As your city councilor, I will listen and seek to better understand the experiences of all we serve. I will certainly not forget about the future and certainly not forget about the past. I am grateful to be joined in this effort by several city councilors that have taken me under their wing and given me the ability to look at this city in a new way. Each one of them have showed us the ability to give unique point of views that make our conversations both richer and our decisions more collaborative. When we disagree, I hope that we remember that our diversity of opinions reflects the diversity of our residents. Let us govern with respect for each other and recognition of our shared goal to help people of Malden thrive and grow. Our job as elected officials is not only to listen to each other and our constituents, our job is to lead. I lead take many forms, beginning with the basics. We are elected to make sure the essential work of government is done. We must make sure people are safe and secure. We must be wise and prudent steward of our public dollars and certainly our open space. And we must manage our infrastructure so that our businesses, both family and large, can function and flourish. Leadership is not about a vision or social media updates. It is about setting a compass towards a better future and forging a path wide enough for all of us to walk. Through my leadership, we have doubled down our commitment to increase our diversity, inclusion, equal rights, transparency, acceptability, infrastructure, open space, climate change, inclusionary zoning, the Housing Affordable Trust Fund. I co-founded the community fridges. The Community Preservation Committee was passed under me as one of the ordinance chair, and the supporting programs who are less fortunate. I am very proud of being nationally recognized for an ordinance that requires the replacement of lead pipes when a home is sold or upgraded. That is progress. It is tangible. We can see it and we can feel it. And yet our success in some areas at times only sharpens the contrast between the work we've done and the work we still have to do. I realize some people in our community are still waiting for their turn. Even amidst a rebounding economy, many residents struggle to find stable careers and can't afford decent housing. And all the while, the pressures of transportation, of poverty, and tightens. I got to run. I will work to strengthen our career paths, foster a relationship, and work together. I leave you with this. I visited the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library for the first time this summer. The quote that reminds me of this: all this will not be finished in 100 days, nor will be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of the administration, not even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin, and let us begin now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. So we will move forward to our initial questions, and you thought 5 minutes wasn't enough time. For our subsequent questions, we're going to have 2 minutes response for each question. And I ask you if you could pay closer attention to Mabel. Mabel, could you wave, please? Mabel, thank you so much for doing this. Mabel actually has a very difficult job along with our translators. They cannot allow their attention span to wane once during this entire evening. So thank you for doing this. Mabel will put up the 30-second sign. I will do the 10-second verbal, and then Mabel will hold up the end of time sign. So just as a reminder for folks on the call. So let's see. So we'll move forward. The first question will go to Mr. DeLacy, followed by Mr. DeMarco. And the question is, the city has implemented several measures to improve language access to city services. What, if any, role have you played in these endeavors? And what additional measures would you like to see applied in the city of Malden? Mr. DeLacy, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leverett, for that question. I do believe this is a critically important question, and in particular for the audience that we're speaking with tonight. In brief, it was probably more than a year ago when outreach was first done to me by other residents, and I was in contact with at least one city councilor, as well as a member of the city clerk's office. Certainly talked about tools that are available through computer science, which have improved greatly over time. On the other hand, I realized that there's nothing like the native-born translator to help. So I am a strong advocate for translation. I am aware that the school committee is using language translation, real people now. I am aware that a proposal was made to the sitting city council to use that same approach. And I'm aware that certain members of the city council refused to pursue it. So while there were advocates, there were opponents. It's proven economic, it's proven feasible, and it's proof positive that it should be happening now. So I'm in full support. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. DeMarco, you are up next.
He's on mute.
You are muted, sir.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Leverett. I have operated a business here in Malden for the past 18 years, going on 19 years. And that entire time, we have used language services here. We have had clients from every walk of life, clients from every language that is spoken, frankly, in the high school. And we have used them with a variety of matters before the city. We have brought translators into matters before the city. I am a full support of language services. I believe technology has advanced to the point where it can be utilized anywhere at any time. My phone is with me at all times, and I utilize it for language services with my clients in initial meetings. I can utilize it with constituents at any time. I utilize language services on a daily basis. My clients, like I said, come from every walk of life. And so I think the city should be utilizing those same services. I think the city has done an amazing job in a lot of areas. I think improvement can be made, and I think we're getting there. And I'm glad to see when those services are expanded. I'm glad to see when the services are made available. And, you know, we've got to keep striving for more and more as we go. So yes, I'm in full support of language services being expanded with the use of technology and other means.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Mr. Mathis.
Hi there. Thank you. Thank you. So this is an issue that comes up every 2 years. I'm proud to say that this is something that we've talked a lot about on the council and something I talked about during the mayor race. And every year I see that there are more people who are multilingual working in City Hall, which is an advantage to everyone who needs to avail themselves of city services. I've also noticed in my time in city government that the ballots have gone from English only to multilingual ballots, as have city communications that get mailed out to residents and notices that get posted around the city. I know that fellow councilors of mine have done an amazing amount of outreach to the Chinese community and others. And City Hall also offers some electronic translation. I noticed that if you take any document in any language and you put it into Google, it'll spit it back to you perfectly translated. I'd like to see more interfacing on that level in City Hall to help people who are trying to get city services. We all deserve equal access to these city services. So it's an issue that I'm sure is not going away. There's improvement that needs to happen, and we're all willing to work on it. And as it gets better, we're always listening to the community on the feedback that we need to make this a more inclusive community that breaks down the language barrier.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you for this question, because it's essential for fully including everyone in democracy in this city. And we've made some progress, but it's really uneven. So my approach has been to lead by example. A number of groups I've been a part of, including the Mayor's Advisory Group on the Obama Pledge, the People's Budget grassroots group that I was a part of, made sure to get our materials translated into Chinese, Vietnamese, and other languages to make sure that people can participate. My campaign has translated materials. That was a really important commitment for me. And I've advocated at city council meetings for more investment in diversity, equity, inclusion, and translation funds. As a city councilor, I would support a standard for translation across all city services and programs that would be, affirmed by the council, so there is accountability there, as well as partnerships around language classes. And I would also say that we need to improve not just translation and language, but communication overall, because if communication isn't clear, putting it in a different language isn't going to make it more clear. We need more forums and regular ways for people to give feedback to the city, feedback surveys and things like that, as well as consistent and predictable communication from the city on key issues, not knowing, kind of what's going to be on Facebook and what's going to be a robocall. So I support that kind of regular, predictable styles of communication, especially in multiple formats, so that folks, if you only get information via email or phone or whatever, is going to work best for you, that the city is paying attention to that. So I lead by example and want to see a city standard and improved communication that can be translated to really include all residents.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Spatafora.
Thank you. Certainly, I think everybody's going to agree, accessibility and language access. We should all be doing what we can do to make government more transparent and accessible. I supported the allowance of having people able to attend meetings remotely. New City Hall is set up for that, and we have been using that. It's increased the transparency in government by enabling a greater percentage of the public to find out what's going on in real time, and also preserving the meeting so that it may be reviewed at a later date. The translation services that Mr. DeLacy did mention, I know Council DeMaria has been working on that language access policy, and it's difficult in the city to nail down what languages to do when you have a city as diverse as Malden. I know there's been many different languages they've been spoken, and I supported this policy and set forth the plan that would allow for interpretation services, especially for meetings and events that are critical to all the community to be involved. We are setting up right now for the Fellsmere Pond public meetings, and we had a debate on how many interpreters and what language, and we decided on 3. So the challenge is always which language and how many there is a finite pool of money, but I fully support that. I would also see that Malden was noted as a model for other cities and towns to increase limited language for English-speaking voters' rights, and I was in total support of the funding to hire a person in the city clerk's department who's fluent in both Mandarin and Cantonese. And I also fully supported the mayor's request for legislation to increase translation of candidates' names on the ballots, improving language access, especially in areas as important as voting is certainly essential. But I also think it goes into diversity and equity inclusion. I mean, the hiring into making Malden residents have access in their city hall, police and fire and teacher is certainly important. One thing I had the opportunity meeting with the new senior center director. I did ask that individual there's a newsletter. That newsletter was never translated in any language. That newsletter will be translated in multiple language going forward. So that's one improvement we're going to be doing going forward. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And Ms. Cologne Hayes. Do you prefer Ms. Hayes or Ms. Cologne Hayes?
No, Cologne Haze is great, and thank you for pronouncing that correctly.
Thank you.
It's Cologne. So thank you for that. First of all, Malden is, our population is 40% of our population is foreign born. There is absolutely no reason why we don't have better translation systems available in our city right now. The school committee does it. The city council should have been doing it. They should have been doing it many years ago. It's not like it's a surprise that we have a lot of, a diverse population. And I know that we like to say how we live in the most diverse city, or one of the most diverse cities in Massachusetts, but we have to support that. And we have to support the people in it in order to boast about it. Google Translate is not a great way of translating things. Anyone who speaks a second language knows that that is not, it can give very false information. So I think that I worked actually with GMAACC. I worked with them and my due to apply for CARES Act funding with the Boston Legal Center in Boston, and there is money there, right? There's CARES Act money that we could have paid for some translation services. There was like something like, I think we had maybe around $400 million coming in, and we only accounted for, the last time I looked it up, maybe 1.4 million. So there's so much more money there that I tried to look up to see where it went. I spent most of the day today trying to find out. And so that's money that we could use. So there's really no excuse that we don't have better translation systems and language access. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Up next is question 2. How can the city be of more assistance to small businesses, particularly immigrant-owned and minority-owned small businesses? And you'll all have 2 minutes to answer this question. And to begin, we'll have Roberto DeMarco.
Thank you very much, Leverett. So how can the city be more help? First and foremost, when it comes to starting a small business, it is the second largest investment in most people's lives. Getting involved in a small business is an immense challenge. It is something that is a dream. The vast majority of small businesses fail, and they fail not for want or for desire or for skill. They fail for knowledge, and knowledge is what we need. We need to educate people before they get out there. Seminars, free knowledge as to getting going. There are plenty of attorneys. There are plenty of financial advisors who are willing to give of their time and effort to teach people how to get a small business going. The city to give space for those things. To sponsor programs. The MRA was doing this years back. Bringing those programs back into the city will help. Bringing these programs back into the nonprofits will help. The small business seminars that allow individuals the space to test out their ideas, to network with one another. We have amazing organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. We have amazing organizations that started up in the middle of COVID, like the downtown organization that was run fully on Zoom that supported one another. So there are plenty of ways that the city can do it. All we need is to give them the space, and a city council and leaders are there to get us going. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much. Up next, John Matheson.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that question. Being a small business owner myself and working in Malden, one thing we can do is always promote Malden and promote buying local. Malden has a lot of great businesses, particularly great restaurants, but also, great different retail shops and attorneys and professionals of every kind. I think that that's something that we are getting better at. You see Malden Square starting to come around. Obviously, like most of these issues, that's something that it's going to be a continued work in progress that we're going to continue to work on. Excuse me about that camera. But I think we have an opportunity now. So I read that 40% of all new jobs are jobs in the small business area. With people seeking employment and coming out of the summer and looking for new employment opportunities, small business is going to be there to help them. I know Malden does a great job through the chamber as being a small business incubator and offering shared office space, something that I'm a big proponent of. But also, we can improve the infrastructure that supports these businesses, the streets, the sidewalks, the parking. How often do you think to yourself, I'm going to go somewhere and buy something I need, but where is it most convenient for me to go? It's going to be the place where I can find a parking spot and access that business. I can see that I'm running short on time, but if we were to take a new audit of city parking and determine all the areas where maybe there shouldn't be a parking spot, but very often where we could add a parking spot and make it safe and accessible to people, I think that is the number one thing we can do to promote small business, as well as providing that support system that the chamber and the city government and the city council is very interested in. So I do see a bright future for small business here in Malden, and I appreciate that question. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Carrie McDonald.
Thanks. I love this question because as I've been talking to voters, I've realized how many people have started businesses out of their own homes in the pandemic. I've talked to people who started design businesses, dog treat businesses, juice businesses, crafts businesses. And that is a really precious opportunity for our community to build wealth that stays here. And so I put this out as an idea for my campaign a few months ago. I think we need a Malden business incubator, a separate organization focused on this. We do have, we have examples in Somerville. You could check out Greentown Labs, or you can look at the Roxbury Innovation Center in Boston. It's a centralized space with wraparound services for businesses. You often can go and get, grants and other types of funding to support that. And yes, it can help you get off the ground. It also helps small businesses not have to afford brick and mortar storefront space, which is often a huge upfront cost to getting started. And so you can use the shared space there in the shared facilities, maybe working on agreements for food specific facilities so that you can have access to that kind of commercial kitchen. There's a commercial kitchen you can rent in Malden, so partnering with that. So there's a lot of amazing opportunities there, and it would give us the opportunity to target fellowship and entrepreneurship programs to Black, Indigenous, and people of color owned businesses, culturally focused businesses, and folks who have been underserved by the traditional kind of business development and banking structure. So I would be super excited to work on that. I've talked with a couple of business owners in Malden who would be also excited to help support that and find resources for that. And that's would be something I would really be excited to work on, building a business incubator with those wraparound services for when people have those beautiful ideas and just want to get started as easily as possible with the support of their community.
Great, thanks very much. Craig Spatafor.
Thank you very much, and a great question. Certainly coming from a family that owns several small businesses in the city of Malden, I think the first thing that any city official would tell you, or any business owner would want, is first you have to make sure you have safe community. Business does not thrive without having the residents feel safe, and certainly the merchants to feel safe when they either prosper those restaurants or the manufacturing. So having a strong police force is vital. Second, I think the access to capital. At the end of the day, you need to have the access to capital for somebody to want to take that leap of faith. And then you need some expertise. And that's where we have Mr. Kevin Duffy, who does the business initiative in the city of Malden. I do want to say the word small business is a little bit of a conundrum, because we've been very lucky that we've had several films filmed in the city of Malden. By filming those scenes in the city of Malden, they've actually supported not only renting out those spaces, but certainly catering, making donations. So that really has helped trickle down to the local residents here, and certainly some of our nonprofits getting that. The other thing I would say is right now the city of Malden is going through a transformation with the Malden Redevelopment Authority, and that's going to become a new department within the city's strategic planning. And I think that's going to allow us not only to foster, I think, the access to capital, but the availability and access to potential real estate, the experience of industry professionals, And I would also say the awareness and navigation of small business technical skills. And finally, I think we have to do an outreach to immigrant owners, minority owners, and women-owned businesses to really help them thrive in the city, because Malden was built on small businesses, and we need to continue going forward. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Karen Colon Hayes.
Hi, thank you for that question. I've also been doing lots of research on small businesses, especially during the pandemic. We all know, I think the question also asked about, in particular, minority-owned businesses. I heard that. So okay, thank you. I want to, hit that. So during the pandemic, minority and women-owned businesses were affected by far more than any other small businesses. And so speaking in Malden, going to the businesses, and actually during those great festivals, I mentioned Kevin Duffy, there was a wonderful opportunity where they were highlighting small businesses there and minority-owned businesses. And I made sure that I went up and talked to all of them. And the number one thing that I heard from small, especially Black minority-owned businesses were cultural businesses. A lot of them are from home, right? They're not brick and mortar, which is what Carrie was talking about, right? That's and especially during the pandemic, people have gone more to like home businesses where they weren't able to access the loans that the MRA gave out. There were great loans for businesses, no doubt about it, but you had to be brick and mortar. Many of these businesses that were working out of their houses did not have the opportunity to have access to any of those loans. So they suffered disproportionately more than any of the other small businesses. So ARPA funding that's coming in, right? The American Rescue Plan funding specifically has funding available to start, for people to build up their infrastructure. And they'll give collateral support, loan support. So we need to be focusing on our planning for that money that is coming down the road now. I mean, there is a tremendous amount of money coming in, and we need to be getting input from everyone, inclusive input from our community to see what is the best ways to spend that money. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And Brian DeLacy.
Yeah, thanks very, very much for this question. This is great to hear. This is near and dear to my heart. After business school, I worked very closely with small businesses, typically as a consultant and these were founders who grew and developed very successful businesses, which they in turn oftentimes sold. And subsequently to that, I worked with startup operations, and I worked very intensively in researching in an academic environment, essentially business formation. And in fact, I extensively researched, interviewed people who started their businesses in incubators. So exhaustive, deep history. And I would love to engage the city, the people who are already on the payroll, and to bring together the group of local business people who would benefit from this, perhaps with a more public-facing business center that could provide outreach. I think Malden should be a destination for small businesses. This is a great opportunity ahead. So thank you for asking that question.
Great, thanks very much. Before we move on to question number 3, just a quick reminder to all of the candidates, you're free to share whatever contact info you'd like, resources you'd like to share with the participants, whether it's website, Facebook page, Instagram, things that I have no idea how to use. But you're free to share all of those with the attendees, and we'd love to share that. In terms of the attendees, we'd love to keep you keep you engaged. Please continue to submit your comments into the chat, even though we are on webinar mode. You can chat with the panelists and the participants. So please feel free to include your comments and insights into the chat. We'd love to keep you engaged as well. Moving to question number 3. How can the city of Malden, the city itself, in terms of the faces in government, the faces in City Hall, and those participating in city government and active in the city, how can the city of Malden increase the diversity of its own workforce to better reflect its growing resident population? And the first question will go to John Matheson.
Hi, thank you very much. And I appreciate this question. So I know recently the city of Malden has hired a a diversity officer to help make the city and its employment, become more diverse and do headhunting when it comes to positions that we want to fill so that our staff more accurately reflects the makeup of our community. Of course, one of the things that's happened more recently in Malden is the makeup of our community has changed faster than careers begin and end. So I wouldn't be in favor of laying people off in the middle of their career based on their race. Nor would I be in favor of hiring people strictly on the basis of their race. But I do think it's important that we take it seriously, that when we have an opening and an opportunity to do better, that we get out there and we actually examine the talent pool that's out there and try our best to make sure that we promote people that resemble our community and give opportunity, particularly to people who live here in Malden. I've been fortunate to be appointed. I received the governor's appointment to the Malden Public Housing Board of Commissioners. And I know we have a vacancy on there now. I've talked with a lot of seniors about this issue, and in the Malden public housing arena, about a third of our many thousands of residents, which are all affordable residents, are Asian Americans. There's a vacancy on that commission right now, and I'm hoping that gets filled. It's a mayor's appointment. I'm hoping it gets filled by an Asian American or someone who's bilingual, particularly I think someone who speaks Cantonese or Mandarin or both, to help bridge those communities. And I think that when you find a community is more able to communicate amongst each other, we'll be more aware of the job opportunities that are out there, and we'll be able to tackle this issue a little bit better in the future. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much. And if there's any way you can share the location of that posting in the chat, I think everybody would love to see that. If you have that at your disposal, if not, then we encourage folks to search for that and try to submit their application for that as well. But thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Sure. Up next, Carrie McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. This is such a key question. And this is one where I bring extensive professional experience. As I said, I oversee a large national organization that has totally revamped its hiring process in the last few years. And what I've come to understand is how much good practice there already is in the human resources community, and we're just behind. We don't have to reinvent the wheel on this one at all. You know, it's a distraction to talk about laying people off based on race. That is illegal, and no one does that. And so is hiring solely on the basis of race, because it's a setup. It doesn't work even if it was legal. So that's a distraction. The thing we need to focus on is, number one, what are the barriers that have kept the workforce from representing the community already? It's not because there aren't qualified and talented people of color in our community and in Massachusetts, right? So we need to identify those barriers, and we need to understand language experience and experience with our diverse community as essential qualifications for the job of doing city services in Malden, not just kind of nice add-ons. Number two, recruitment. Recruitment is totally the name of the game, and we need to monitor hiring pools to make sure that we are getting diverse applicants, because you can't make hires with people that didn't apply, right? That's where we have to do more to reach out and make sure that people can be a part of job pools. You know, we don't have unnecessary educational barriers or other things like that. Number three, we need to have an equitable hiring process that includes the way that we do interviews, the way candidates are considered and monitored, and that there are checks in the hiring before a hire is made to ensure all of that process is followed. And number four, we need to focus, if we succeed in diversifying our workforce, we need to be ready to be thinking about retention and promotion issues, because we're going to run up against those immediately. So removing barriers, recruiting, equitable process, and focusing on retention, promotion, and monitoring our impacts. And we can definitely do it.
Great, thanks very much. Next is Craig Spatafor. Oh, you're muted.
So thank you for the question. And this question is not unique to Malden, the challenges, and certainly not even the public sector. Every private sector right now is going through the same training and hiring challenges that we face here in the city. But Malden has made progress. I think the first thing we need to recognize as a community is we do need to be realistic what we can and can't do. Some of our hiring practices in terms of the hiring pool, it is on a civil service, and the city of Malden is very limited in some of those hiring pools. While we try to encourage people to take those exams, the fire exam, the police exams, those are under civil service. So I think there needs to be a realistic and honest discussion what's going on there. It's also been a goal that I think the city and the mayor is certainly, and the council has certainly put forward in the last 15 months. Should we start it sooner? Absolutely. There's a lot of work we've done as a community to overcome the continued obstacles as immigrants and people of color have encountered. I know of a lot has learned as a counselor. I've gone through training both through the public sector and private sector, and will do my part in the city, a place where a resident is respected, treated fairly, and welcome in all aspects of our government and community. And we need to do a better job, even at the council level, serving us right now. As I look back over the past few years, we've had the opportunity as hiring positions we appointed, and to be quite honest here, we missed it. Totally in support of the mayor's hiring of a DEI coordinator, Bibios. She's already done a tremendous amount of work, both in terms of outreach and on the HR hiring practice. I know she's working right now with HR to widen that outreach effort in city hall positions. And my understanding that she will start the trainings with the hiring manager as well as the city council. So this is not something that you put inside the HR manual and stop. This is a living and breathing document. You have to continue going forward. Thank you.
Great, thanks very, very much. Karen Colon-Hayes.
Thank you. As many people know, this question hits right to the core of who I am and what I've been advocating for many, many years. So I just want to address the fear tactics. Also, we cannot use fear tactics that are scaring people that for some reason, and a few of the councils, even on this councilors on this call, that you can fire white people and replace them with people of color diversity. That's just silly and it's illegal and no one is going to do it or say it, right? So, but we do need to catch up. We need to catch up. And I know that the city has taken steps. Unite Malden, that was a great initiative by the mayor, and hiring the diversity and equity officer is a good step, right? But it's like basically almost the bare minimum there. She's one person for the entire city. And we need a department if we're going to get this done. It's hard work. There are hard discussions and decisions, and we're fighting an uphill battle against those kind of fear rhetoric that you hear people saying. So once we do hire people, and we've lost a couple of teachers also recently of color because of the retention and being supported. And being supported once you get in. So we can't just hire someone and then just let them kind of be off on their way. We have to make sure that they feel comfortable, that they feel safe, that they feel supported and included. So a lot of ideas about where we look to hire people, and maybe reworking some of our how we advertise, right? What we put in there. We're looking for people who are culturally aware. There's a lot of things to do to attract the kind of people that we want to hire, because we do need representation. There are, yeah, okay, thank you. And it can be done.
Thanks very much. Next is Brian DeLacy.
Yeah, thanks very much for this question. So I'll offer an idea that I've recently actually shared. I had a nice lunchtime discussion with members of the Mass Senior Action group from Malden of particularly in and around language access and issues in the public housing sector. I subsequently reached out to Steve Finn, who's the head of that operation, and he very graciously sent me a tremendous amount of information about the amount of money, which I think would shock everyone, that they have spent on translation services. I can make that available to people. Additionally, we talked about the hiring that needs to get done there. But additionally, and this is the offer that I put out to the invitation I put out to the mayor's office and others, which is right today, we can start with a volunteer organization to identify language skills, cultural interests in the staff that exists in the city today, to give people in this audience, in our meeting tonight, more access, whether it's through committees or other opportunities to engage. I think this is crucial. I think the city clerk's office has done it. I didn't know about this when I made this proposal. I previously served as executive director of a multi-thousand, multi-international volunteer organization. And this is a golden opportunity for Malden residents to get engaged. So let's sign up now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And finally on this question, Roberto DeMarco.
Thank you very much, Leverett. When it comes to questions of diversity, one of the first and expanding diversity within the workforce, one of the first things that needs to happen is education. And because it happens at all levels. It needs education in order to educate for jobs. It needs education in order to educate for the type of issues that were brought up by Carrie in terms of the recruitment. It needs education in terms of the issues that was brought up by Craig, that was brought up by Karen. All of the ideas here are accurate. This is why opening up the dialogue is so important. Why does it take sitting down at these debates in order to come up with consensus? This is what we need. The education of recruitment first and foremost. Job descriptions that challenge us to expand the type of job descriptions and create a job description that expands so that it includes the talents that our residents in Malden have. Recruitment so that we're expanding who we're going after to fill these positions as they become open. The diversity department. I agree with Karen completely. La Rochelle is not enough by herself to fill up the job as it sits. It's a good start. And Malden is on its way, but we've got a lot of work in front of us. How do we get there? We listen and we figure out the next step. I don't have much more to add than a lot of these great ideas that have been put out there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to question number 4. What are your thoughts on affordable housing and its availability in Malden? Would you advocate for increasing the amount, keeping it the same? What are your views and plans in that regard? We'll begin with Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. This is such an essential question for our city and for the region. And it's one I hear a lot from voters because the price of housing just goes up every year, double digits, and people are getting pushed out. And that means that if we can't help preserve the ability to afford Malden, then we're going to lose some of that beautiful mix that we love about Malden. So affordable, and I like to say attainable housing, is really important and a centerpiece of what I'm talking about in my campaign. I think, yes, affordable housing in terms of Section 8 or those kinds of programs is important. And we are lacking housing in the middle and lower tiers of the housing market overall. So we need a strategic plan for the city about how we're going to get the housing we need based on the housing needs assessment that we've done recently in the city. So a couple of things I really want to see. Number one, I want to help people age in place who have houses already. Often our older folks, help them get the resources to improve their property or make it more accessible, have other ways to contribute to the income there. Number two, I want to make sure that we have good protections for renters. A lot of people don't own. A lot of people are renting. And we have a lot of absentee landlords. That's another issue I hear very consistently. And we want people invested in this community, not absentee landlords or folks who own a bunch of properties and aren't paying attention to them. So making sure that we continue. We've actually been a leader in a lot of this renter protection work. And so continuing that in Malden. And then number three, making sure that we are going after the kinds of grants that can support the right type of housing that is in character with the neighborhoods. And like I said, is in that middle and lower tier. There are state grants that Malden has not gone after in the way that some of our neighboring communities have. There's federal money coming that we need to be dedicating to housing, building up the working capital of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I want to see a strategic plan for housing, renter protections, helping people age in place, and making sure we have a good plan to get the housing we need in the middle and lower tiers of the market with those outside resources.
Great, thanks very much. Councillor Spatafor.
Thank you very much. I think Malden over the last couple of years has done a lot with affordable housing. We can always try to do more. I mean, this is not a problem just for Malden. We always hear people say, Somerville and Cambridge, but you look on those numbers, Medford has higher rates right now than Malden. So we are not unique. I also like the challenge when we say we need affordable housing, which we do, but in the same spot, we also want to say we need more green space. Malden is already one of the most dense cities in the state. I think what we've done is we've established the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's helped us to create and preserve affordable housing, including rehabbing some of the abandoned properties. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of them right now because the economy, we're being driven out of the ability to buy them because the housing stock's so expensive. We've given mitigation money to a lot of residents to stay in their home. We're going to pass an inclusionary zoning ordinance that's been worked on for the last year and a half. I worked on that internal team. I was a member of that committee to complete the inclusionary zoning feasibility study. We got that first draft off. It's an ordinance right now and probably passed by the end of the year. The ordinance was based on months of work to make sure we design a policy and procedures that fits in within the needs of Malden, not Everett's, not Method's, but Malden's. And as a council, I've supported the city's partnership with the Action for Boston Community Development, ABCD, to secure Community Preservation Committee funds for the security deposit pilot program, which allows us to give money as a security deposit so people can get rental. A lot of times they can't come up with the last month in security deposit. That helped eligible homeowners obtain housing by paying their security deposit by hand. Again, this is not something that's going to be solved overnight, and we're certainly making great strides over the last couple of years, both in terms of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the inclusionary zone ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Ms. Cologne Hayes.
Hi, again, great question. Hitting on all the things that I've been advocating for years. So thank you for this question. Actually, I did work with ACDC. I'm going to say it was maybe 8 years ago, around that time where this proposal first came in inclusionary zoning and affordable housing was talked about in Malden. I've been saying this for years. It's not just when it became popular. And if something was done, there was actually 2 counselors who were, I think, on the council when it came forth. And we did hear a lot about, Malden's done its best. We've done more. Other cities need to do their share, but we're talking about Malden people. And Malden people on the last census that just came through, if you looked at the data, we're around 16-20% of our population in Malden are living below the poverty line. That is unacceptable. And housing, you need housing and you need a safe place to live before anything else you can do. Right? Anything. You need to have a place to call home. So affordable housing, we should have done this years ago. I am glad that there is an inclusionary zoning that's coming up. I listened to that. It's a good plan, but it should have been done long ago and not waiting until we're in crisis, which we are. And so that should have been, we should have been forward thinking on that a long time ago. And affordable and inclusionary zoning is just a piece of the puzzle. We need to do more in order to protect our people who live here already, our seniors who are being pushed out of their homes and can't afford to live here in Malden. We can start looking at properties that we already have here from like the problem properties and moving that into affordable housing. I believe in not putting big buildings where everybody lives in one place, but kind of having everybody live together, because together, right, we rise. We need each other. And so we should be living among each other and helping each other out. ARPA funds are coming down the road again. We need to have a plan. There's funding in there for affordable housing. We should be talking about it already. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Mr. DeLacy.
Thank you very much for the question on affordable housing. When my wife Lynn and I moved here to Malden originally, we came from Cambridge. We had been renters. We're familiar with rent control. We're familiar with that environment and the implications of it. We're also familiar with what happens when housing becomes so expensive that children, families that grew up in an area can no longer afford it. Malden is at that point now. And so as Karen referred to forward thinking, back around 2015-16, I actually spoke in favor of what was then an inclusionary zoning proposal that was put forward. I spoke at the planning board at that point in time, and it was the Mass Senior Action folks were behind it. They did a lot of great work on it. A couple of good counselors put it forward, and the majority of counselors opposed it. I spoke at the planning board meeting. In response, I called for affordable housing units to be included in a development. The developer opposed it. I went and I spoke with the mayor about this. He was fully briefed on the viewpoints that I had at that point in time. This has taken entirely too long. It doesn't need to take this long. It's really an important issue. And I'm glad that people are seeing progress now. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. DeMarco.
I think that, you know, what we need is imagination. I've been working in the city for the last almost 20 years in law, and imagination has gotten us a lot of housing done in imaginative ways. I was instrumental in bringing co-housing to Malden. My project for co-housing has created different ways in which elderly, first-time home buyers, stable families have all found new ways of living together. I'm in the process of doing another housing development that's going to bring in affordable housing and first-time home buyer programs. I have created other housing developments and first-time home buyer programs in other cities. What we need is imagination. It just doesn't fall back on the same old, let's create either rent control or grants or this or that. What we need to do is we need to think about different methods. With co-housing, for instance, a lot of times the people who are creating the co-housing fund their own affordability methods. These are programs that can work in a variety of different ways, and nothing is a one shoe fits every foot. What we need to do is we need to open up dialogues so that everybody has a chance to find new methods, so that there's different ideas floated at the table. As a city councilor, I'll be able to bring these ideas to bear. I'll be able to open up the dialogues so that when it comes to things like housing, which I have 18 years of experience, we're going to be able to go past just the inclusionary housing, which is a great idea. We'll go past the housing trust fund, a great idea. We'll go into new areas so that the elderly aren't pushed out of their house by increasing taxes, by increasing values. We'll go past these issues and we'll be able to stabilize our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Matheson, to end this question.
Thank you very much. So in the in the time that I've been looking at this issue, essentially from 2010 to 2020, Malden didn't add any affordable housing to its housing stock. But at the same time, Malden was doing better than most of the surrounding communities. Malden had greater than 10% of its housing stock as affordable. It also had, and I supported this land use study, greater than 1.5% of its land area dedicated to affordable housing. That again is better than almost every community in the state of Massachusetts. However, we did miss some opportunities along the way. The time to advocate for affordable housing is when you're negotiating with one of these apartment developers. We all know that Malden has added thousands of market rate luxury apartments that, frankly, I don't know how some of the tenants can afford them. The time when those are being commissioned, that's the time to say to those developers, we want 5%, 10% of your structure to be affordable. We created HDIP, where we actually, to incentivize the redevelopment of the downtown, we negotiated for tax discounts with two developers. One to create the city hall, the other, Jack Brennan, the city got nothing out of the $2 million taxes that he's getting to save. That would have been a great opportunity to say to Mr. Brennan, you're going to add some affordable housing to help the folks in Malden that actually need it. I'm not going to say that I've been a champion of the cause, but I've always supported the stuff that's come across my table with respect to affordable housing, whether it's the trust fund, the security deposit, the CPC, which we established while I was in the council. It supported public funding for affordable housing. These are things that we have done, and as Councilor Spatafora has just indicated, inclusionary zoning, which again is something that you see a lot of to get yourself out of the specter of 40B. Malden is catching up, and I think that it's poised to do some great things in this area. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to question number 5. What do you see as the most pressing issue in the city? Whether it's a budgetary issue, environmental, social justice, diversity, civic engagement. Somebody in the chat, I recall a little while ago, brought up a new courthouse, a potential new courthouse. What do you see as the most pressing issue in the city, and how would you address that issue? And we will begin with Mr. Spatafora.
I think, you mentioned the courthouse that was, that's been talked about being an art community. I don't know if that's the most pressing issue. I think we've talked a lot about the ones that come to mind, but I think I'd be remiss to sit here and say those don't take second place to the COVID problem right now with a pandemic that's affecting all of that. It's affecting jobs, affordability, access to government. It's certainly things that we don't know when the end is. We think we know what the end is, but somebody who's had to work remotely and educate kids remotely, and then seeing people not being able to get out of their homes to buy food, and certainly some people who lost their job and now are probably going to face the ability maybe to be thrown out of their home. I know the mayor has supported the moratorium for the city of Malden, so that's very important. But I would say COVID right now is the most pressing issue. And I think Malden's done a lot in terms of that. We've committed to more affordable housing. Glad to see the MRA is part of that. And we're working to make sure that there's a $100,000 grant that we're putting together to make sure that we can use that for rent for the COVID relief. But my answer would be COVID right now, just because it has tentacles in everything we're doing in every aspect of not even just the city of Malden, but clearly the world.
Thanks very much. Ms. Cologne Hayes.
Okay, so yes, great question. I do agree with that. The number one pressing issue is recovery from COVID and preparation for the future. One thing that came out, I was the Human Services and Community Outreach Director for the city of Malden, and during COVID, immediately I tried to take action and get help to our people who needed it. It was apparent that nobody was prepared for this, nobody, right? But we weren't. So Malden, that's something that we need to look at, and we have to be better prepared for outreach to our community, to make better connections. Think Bread of Life, Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors, all of those community organizations right now actually could probably use some help, because they are just doing work 24/7. I was out there delivering, and we got some mutual aid. Some residents called about mutual aid, and immediately I connected them all. And Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors started in. They went right to work. We were delivering meals. We were delivering cleaning products. We were going to hospitals. We were helping actually sister cities. That's what mutual aid is all about. So our city is going to need to plan for, hopefully this is not going to come back, but we do see some uptick in it, right? So we need to have better plans in place so that we're not caught off guard, and that we can outreach to our minority populations and those for people that for better communication and recovery from this pandemic is 100% number one. We need to be sure that our city council is meeting and that we're doing that. We don't take time off. If necessary, we meet more to make sure that we take care of our people here in Malden.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. DeLacy.
Yeah, thanks for this question about the most pressing thing. There are a lot of high priority concerns, I would say. I believe very much in team efforts and people working together, and the challenges of bridging gaps and getting people on the same page. I think it takes negotiation. I think it takes good intent, certainly safety first, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the concerns about Asian hate that have popped up and reoccurred, whether it's frankly just violence on the street, which we've seen far too much of in the recent months. But I do have a concern, as echoed earlier, about our council needs to meet. And if the council doesn't meet, it took a month, more than a month off in the early stages of the pandemic. How on earth can people be in touch about what's happening if people are just, away from the job? So again, I think participation of residents is a golden opportunity. Let's engage, let's work together, and we'll have a strong government amongst all of us. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. DeMarco.
Councilor Spadafora and Ms. Colin Hayes have already spoken about COVID, so I'm going to bring up something that's related to it, but I think is probably goes hand in hand with it, and that's mental health. I think that the mental health stresses on our community have reached epic proportions. I think our children, I think our seniors, I think our parents, I think our workers, our working mothers and fathers are at their wits' end. And it's only getting worse. It's only getting harder every single day of every single moment. The children are back in masks in their first days of school. The parents are back to stresses over whether or not their children will come home sick, whether or not their children will go back to remote learning. The seniors are back to wondering whether or not they'll be visited, whether or not they'll see their grandchildren tomorrow. The workers are back to whether or not they'll be laid off, whether or not the restaurants will go back to limited occupancy. The mental health crisis that is occupying every moment of every day in the back of everyone's mind is unfathomable. And we need to come together and push for support among our community. As leaders, we need to be positive. We need to make sure that we are not adding to this, that we are at all times remaining positive. We need to stop bringing anything negative to the table. Tonight has been great, and I applaud ACDC. I've been a big supporter of ACDC for years. Leverett, it's great seeing you again after all these years, back to the days when we were on the board together.
Yep.
And GMAACC and everything you've done. We need to continue to have these positive interactions. We need to stop vitriol. We need to show the community that we are one, and we need to bring the heat down. So I encourage us all to act as leaders and to bring the community together and help ease the tension all around. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Matheson, you're next.
Great, thank you very much for the question. I love what I've heard from all the candidates that have spoken. Clearly, there's so many important questions that we can talk about, whether it be public safety, police, fire, or the COVID-19 epidemic, roads, parking, traffic, school, businesses. I'd like to talk a little bit about green space and open space. If you're like me, you just feel more free and more at peace with yourself when you have some beautiful nature around you. And that's very important here in Malden because we only have 5.1 square miles of city space. In that square mileage, we have about 13,000 on average people per square mile. I'm fortunate to come from the west end of the city where we have some beautiful green space that, as Ward 3 Councilor, I was able to help cultivate and take a custodial relationship of. Amridge Park, Patchell Park, Fellsmere Pond. But beyond that, I think that something I'm very proud of was advocating for Tree City USA. When I came to office in 2011, I advocated for Tree USA when, frankly, people were a little dismissive of it, maybe even laughed about it. It took me a few years to convince the establishment that this was the right thing to do, that it would qualify us for grants, that it would increase the curb appeal, that it would increase our property values and frankly, our quality of life in a very fundamental way. And since then, this city has really latched onto it. And I believe that now we're in our 6th year. I believe it's the 6th year. And we have planted hundreds of trees, something that you wouldn't have saw 10 years ago. In fact, what you'd see is a lot of stumps. And we were grinding out so many stumps that we had to buy a stump grinder. We wore it out and we had to replace it and keep on grinding. And then we replaced all the deltas and islands and all the city streets to increase flowering bushes and trees. And I can tell you, we've had some tremendous feedback. Malden River has now become an issue, something I've advocated for since it was called Telecom City back in 1996. And finally, I think we're getting some community involvement and some momentum on these things. And if you're like me, well, that's the end of my time, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to that important issue.
Great, thank you. And actually, to just as a side note, I think that's the first time I've ever heard the word stump grinder in any panel or debate that I've ever moderated. So thank you for
Glad
that.
I could be the first.
All right. I think there are a number of other questions that folks on the organizing committee.
I'm sorry. Can I can I have a chance to respond to the question?
Oh, sorry. My apologies. My apologies, Mr. McDonald. My apologies. I was so anxious to get to the participants' questions, and that is my fault. I am so sorry about that. So please, yes, please.
Yeah, so I have to agree with what I've heard here from the folks on this call. The COVID pandemic overwhelms everything, and it is, we're all, as we say, in the same ocean, but we're not all in the same boat. And we have seen an incredible outpouring of support and care from so many organizations across our city. Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors in particular, I want to hold up, but also Malden Overcoming Addiction and Elliott Community Services and so many others who have just been putting in the extra effort. And I'm really been concerned that it's just not going to be sustainable because people's, donations, their volunteering everyone's exhausted, but the pandemic is not over and we can't lose focus. And I say that as somebody else who has kids in the schools, trying to make sure that, my kids feel safe when they're under 12. There is no vaccine for them, and so I think that the leadership required to help our community survive this is the demand of a lifetime. And I really want to see more investment in those community partnerships so that that extra effort doesn't wane right when we need it most. And, I appreciate you bringing up mental health, Rob, because when we ask people in this community, what do you think the city needs to invest its resources in through the grassroots people's budget project that we did? Number one was mental health services at every level. And so we got to find a way to do more as much as we're doing. I want to acknowledge that the Asian community in particular has borne a brunt of hate and the rising tide of violence and hate crimes against Asian folks in this country due to bigotry based in, under people's misconceptions about the pandemic. And I've been a part of trying to push back against that. I spoke at the Vigil for Victims of Anti-Asian Violence in March that GMAACC hosted. And so I just want to say that was very closely on my heart, and that we have to continue to pay attention to the ways in which this pandemic exacerbates racism and all of the other inequities in our society.
Great, thank you very much, and my apologies again for the misstep earlier on. It's like, as I was mentioning, we still have a number of questions that the organizers came up with, but I always like to go to folks who have gone into the chat, and I want to reward them for staying engaged and for putting things into the chat. So I want to go to one or two of those questions, and the fact that one of them came from Mei Hung is just a bonus. So I guess the question that she came up with is, if you had the opportunity to redesign the courthouse, and I know we mentioned that a little bit in one of the earlier questions, if you had the opportunity to redesign the courthouse, what would you say? What would your vision be? So we'll go to that question. And the first up on that is Karen Cologne Hayes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure most people here know that the courthouse, there is a plan in place for an arts center that's already beginning. So I'm going to say that I was very excited and happy when I heard that, but I also think if we could somehow combine it into like a community center as well. We have a teen center, we have a senior center, which actually are now in the same place, but we are missing like a lot of other people in between, right? So our community and our arts need to be, taken care of, and it would be great to have a place that we can go and see shows and and have some culture. But I also know that we need to have places where our community groups can meet. Our community groups here, the volunteer groups, nonprofits, are it's what keeps Malden going, right? I'm also a member of a community group. I know how difficult it is to have to volunteer your time for Malden. It's what we during the festivals, the artists and they make Malden great, right? But right now there's no place for them to meet. The senior center now has people coming in the morning and at night, so which is great, but we're going to need room and space for that. I know that City Hall had when they built, there was a whole push in saying that there's community rooms available, but I've been contacting the mayor's office a few times just to see how we can do that. And so far, they're not open yet. But even when they are open, which will be great, I don't think it's going to be enough. There's too many groups in here, and we do such great stuff for Malden. So we should have a place also to meet. So that's what I would like to see there.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. DeLacy, Brian DeLacy.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. I'd wholeheartedly endorse actually what Karen suggested about the cultural center. We didn't coordinate responses on this at all, but just within the past couple of days, I was saying exactly that to people. It's great to have art. It's great to have music. It's great to have theater. We need community. We need a place for people to come together of all nationalities and all interests, and potentially could become a place for some of the ideas that came out today, the incubator, the small business. I do believe actually strongly as well in continuing education, which could take on a range or a host of topics. It could include mental health. It could include continuing education. It could include family issues. So it's wonderful. I guess my recommendation would be get the public involved and make sure there are plenty of public hearings to discuss exactly what's going to happen there. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you. Up next, Mr. DeMarco, Roberto DeMarco.
I have a very, very specific set of ideas. Thanks for the question. I have dreamt, a lot of personal goals for what I'd love to see in a space like that in Malden. Malden has over 100 nonprofits. I think the community space and the meeting space is great, but I think we need to be much, much more specific and have a plan in place. I've actually been laying out that type of plan. That's kind of what I do in my free time. It's a little bit geeky, but that's okay. Everybody's got their own little pastimes. I like makerspace. I think that we need some makerspace to be created in Malden. This is for hard arts, things like costume designs, things like tailoring, things like woodworking, things like theater arts, things like blacksmithing potentially out in different spaces. That might be a little bit difficult, but I also like the theater arts. I like the meeting spaces. I mean, these are all ideas. We've got not only the courthouse itself, we've got the space across the street. We've got tons of ideas, and maker spaces in other towns and cities around the country have been put to great effect for training next generations on all kinds of things in the trades. We have an entire generation that are not learning the trades. Kids that need to find their way in this world where they haven't learned woodworking, they haven't learned metalworking. We want them to get into the trade schools. We want them to find interests. And spaces like this can help to build that in addition. So there's a lot of different ideas. I could go on and on for this. So I know it's a little bit confused, my answer, but anybody wants to chat about it, contact me. I got like a long-term plan on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And as I mentioned, if you want to put your contact info and website so folks can contact you, please put it in the chat. Mr. Matheson, John Matheson.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I grew up just a stone's throw from the courthouse on Bartlett Street, and I went to the Glenwood School up there. I know the community, the surrounding area very, very well. During my time in the council, Malden Hospital was a very big issue, and it took me 8 years and all of my political capital just to prevent that area from succumbing to becoming another massive apartment complex with expensive market rate apartments and different types of housing. In the process of doing that, we engaged the community in many, many meetings, most of which I moderated, but we had several meetings where the community really poured out and brainstormed what they'd like to see there. Open space was part of it, an arts center was part of it, a community center was part of it. People even floated having more senior services up there. So those ideas are always going to come back whenever there's real estate available. A museum of Malden history was something I threw out there, something I thought would have been great at the Oak Grove Community Building, which hasn't been used in many, many years at this point. So what I'd like to see happen, because this is almost a almost a community square for that neighborhood, because you got Pearl Street Station, you got some other, the fruit store that's right there. I would like to see what kind of market forces and commercial opportunities there are out there, because you might be able to have some office space that really benefits and bolsters that community, with maybe some retail there where people can go and shop or make small purchases. And if you were to go that route, you'd actually have some tax revenue come into the community as well. So I'd like to explore all options. We don't own that property, but I think it's a fertile opportunity to explore what's possible there. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a nonprofit or community venture going in there. That might very well be the highest and best use of the property. But I'd like to not foreclose the opportunity of exploring how we can make this a benefit to the community with some commercial opportunity and building a small square there like you have on Highland Avenue and other areas around the city.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, Carrie McDonald.
Yeah, I put a little response to this question in the chat, but I will just say, I mean, I love the Art Center idea. I am a child of artists, musicians, and so it's dear to my heart. And I really think that Malden needs more performance venues, and that's going to be able to draw people to our city at a different hour and engage businesses in a different way than what we have currently. So I'd really like to see that be a part of the planning, whether or not it fits in that exact space. And I also just realized that there's so much need for that kind of public space, shared space, community space, that one space is not going to be all things to all people, and we want that space to succeed. So I agree. I've been really encouraged by the conversation about the Malden Hospital site and the ability to have like a community center or spaces like that where groups can meet, and public use of that site. I'd be really excited about that. I want to see things on the east side of the city too. And folks who I talk to who, live in Ward 6, Ward 8 are often just feeling like a lot of things are downtown. And what about, the folks who live on that side of the city? So I'd love to see, community centers in different parts of the city as well, even if they're small, even storefronts. I'd love to support expanding our library in particular. Libraries, branches can be an incredible space that supports internet access for folks who don't have internet at home. It doesn't have to be about books on shelves. A lot of community groups use libraries as well. And so that's another way that we could be creating multi-use space, but really creating access and partnership in different parts of the city. So I think we're at a beautiful moment to explore lots of possibilities, and want to make sure they have good process about that and that we don't foreclose any imagination too early. But I like the plans and the direction that we're heading. So thanks.
Great. Thank you very, very much. That ends the Q&A portion. There was one question in the Q&A section where Mr. Spatafor, my apologies. We're running up against the time, so I was jumping ahead.
I'll be quick.
So
I'll be quick. I think these are all great things, but I would say people use the word transparency and engagement. So the first thing I would like to do is wait for. I know there's a community group working on this right now in residence, and I'd like to hear the input from the community what they would like to see there. I also attended a forum probably a couple of years ago where there was an arts community, I believe it was in Watertown, where they said, you really need public and private money to make buildings like this succeed in the long term. Unfortunately, we've seen some of these places open up and some of them close because it can't be always in the city dime. I do agree with Carrie in terms of a performing arts center. Medford has the Chevalier Theater, which I've attended. It's great. Is it the right spot? I don't know. But I would say one thing I would say is I definitely want to see the community input, but surprisingly, I think it would be a good spot to have both live, work, artist community. I think we talk about affordable housing. It is near the train station. You can make it so it's deed restricted so they can't have vehicles there, but you could really make something that is a public partnership there, as well as the ability maybe to somebody have studio lofts in that building and they can live there in an affordable housing, and you deed it so that artists have to live there. So I think everything is on the table. But we're talking about housing. We should bring that up in the discussion too. I think it's a good opportunity to look at all matters in there. Thank you, Levitt.
Great. No, thank you very much. And my apologies again.
No problem.
We're starting to run up against.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. We did have one more question in the Q&A section from Cody Lasry. It was, do you have a plan for increasing support for carless Maldonians? Cody, if you would like to put your email in the chat, hopefully the candidates can answer that question for you individually. My apologies. We're running a little bit short on time. Speaking of that, we would like to. I think we may run a few minutes over, but I would like to give the candidates each a brief moment for closing statements. Mabel, if you could adjust your timing on that to a minute. We could offer each candidate an opportunity to offer a quick closing statement, and then Diana will take us home. So for the closing statement is Brian DeLacy.
Thank you very much. I'll be quick and to the point, and it begins probably more than 30 years ago with my wife's auntie in Chinatown when we were out to eat before the children came, and I obviously was having difficulty with my chopsticks, and in her native tongue said to the waiter, "I think he needs a fork." And so it's a question of translation, language access. It can make all the difference in the world. In terms of the other issues, diversity, I think I put forward an idea for volunteerism. Affordable housing, somebody mentioned a big development by a Mr. Brennan. That, in fact, was the one that I spoke out of in favor of affordable housing. It never was adopted by the city council at that time. So I think the most pressing issue right now is for everybody who is watching and participating. Thank you for showing up for this. That's a big step forward. The most pressing issue from this point forward is to elect the right people to lead the council forward. And I would really very much appreciate your vote. My name is Brian DeLacy, running for at-large councilor. Thank you very much for taking this time with us tonight.
Great, thank you. Roberto DeMarco, your closing.
Thank you, Leverett. Thank you, ACDC, and thank you, GMAACC, for hosting tonight. Over the last 20 years, I have represented the people of Malden. I have created jobs. I have created housing. I have defended the people of Malden against the city when necessary. I have helped the city of Malden to expand access to services. I have helped the people of Malden to expand access to their rights. I have provided the people of Malden with access to their legal rights in all venues. I have done everything that a counselor does before I entered into the job, and I have listened. I have provided them with the job of a counselor without ever having stepped into a council chamber. I'm asking for your vote so that I can now actualize that experience. I'm Roberto DeMarco, and I'm running for city councilor at large, and I would appreciate one of your votes. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Up next, John Mathis.
Thank you again for the time and the opportunity. Thank you, Leverett, and everyone involved. I would just like to say that Malden is a community that I love very much. I'm vested in this community as a homeowner, as a business owner, as a lifelong resident. I've dedicated countless hours, not only on the city council, but to charities and different pursuits, helping others throughout this city. Most importantly, I have some valuable experience at a time that I think the city needs stability and continuity. And the experience I have is direct to this position. I was Ward 3 councilor, I was councilor at large, I've served as council president. I would love the opportunity to come back and serve the residents of Malden again and help the city council get back on track. That's something that I would love to do this year, and that's why I'm running for councilor at large. I would like everyone out there to understand that they have 3 votes for councilor at large. This race isn't adversarial. We have some great candidates here, and I wish them all success. You have 3 votes. I would respectfully ask for one of those votes, and I would appreciate your vote for John Matheson for councilor at large this November. Thank you all very, very much.
Great, thank you. Carrie McDonald.
Thank you again to ACDC and GMAACC. You're such assets to this community. As a volunteer in the last year, it's been a real privilege to partner with GMAACC on the Grassroots People's Budget Project and as a speaker in solidarity at the March Vigil for Victims of Anti-Asian Violence. I decided to run for city councilor at large to bring that same spirit of partnership to the city council chamber. And as a reminder, I'm focused on those 3 points of getting the basics right, empowering community voices, and addressing citywide challenges with citywide plans. I want to leave you with the citywide point that you know, which is that the Asian community is such a huge part of Malden, 25% of our city, and you should be able to expect leadership that puts inclusion and equity at the center. This hasn't always been a case. Sometimes it's felt like it's hard to get a seat at the table, and as a younger person and a person of color, I know what that's like. but you will never have to have that dynamic with me. I want to work hard to represent you. I commit to showing up, listening, advocating, supporting your needs, because everyone should feel safe walking down the street or rolling down the street in Malden. And I want to celebrate what you bring to this community. Thank you for this chance to speak with you. I'm Carrie McDonald. I ask for one of your votes for City Councilor at Large on November 2nd.
Great, thank you, Carrie. Councilor Spatafor, Craig Spatafor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, thanks all the speakers here and certainly the residents. Thank you for the panelists. Great job. Malden is a city and a nation built on immigrants, and we depend on newcomers for our vitality and community. We're also proud of the city we built, and we're neighbors. We all walk the same sidewalks. We share the same parks. We shop in the same stores, and we have the same dream of being a vibrant community. And we must listen to each other. I've been a city councilor, and I feel that my work has not gone unnoticed. With countless things have been going on. I can tell you this: a kid that came from a working class family, growing up, realizing the dreams of both my mother and father through education, hard work, and sheer determination, needs to be the story of possibility with all of Malden. These problems did not arise overnight, and they will not be solved overnight. And we certainly will not be solved by one councilor, the mayor, one school committee acting alone. We need to do this together. And I represent the city of Malden in its entirety. And I will just say, over the last tenure, we've opened up a police station, we've opened up City Hall, we've built a brand new City Hall, we secured one of the largest state mass work grants in the history, we've increased our bond rating to the highest level, we funded our schools millions over the state requirement, we've gone green, we have implemented a new trash program, we've created a planning and community development program.
Thank you.
I ask for one of your votes November. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And last but certainly not least, Karen Cologne-Hayes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this forum. Thank the other counselors for being here. You know, what I bring to the table is unique. I don't think I've ever heard someone going from working inside of City Hall and knowing how it works from the inside, working side by side with all of our city employers, and then coming employees, and then coming out and running for city councilor at large. So I've seen it from the community level. I've been working for the city and trying to make, you know, through the community lenses, helping our city move forward. And now I just want to do it at a policy making, because we need to have policies that make sure that these, you know, changes and things that we're going for last into the future. And I also just want to quickly address the fact that I don't see a negative feeling in this city. I think that we're all together. We just need to push forward and we need to move forward. We need to get off of that narrative that there's some negative stuff going on here. We just all want a seat at the table, all of us. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody. I know we're running a little bit behind, but before I turn it over to Diana to close out, I do want to say thank you to all of you. As somebody I mentioned who's moderated many debates and many panels, I want to thank all of you for keeping it civil, keeping it productive, keeping it positive. I think it augurs well for the future of Malden, and I'm grateful for that. Also, thank you for keeping it on time. It's my fault that we're running a little bit behind. And thank you to all the participants. Thank you to all the to the attendees. Please remember that even though the deadline to register for the preliminary election has passed, the deadline for the November election to register is October 13th, and you can do that online as well. So thank you to ACDC, GMAACC, Urban Media Arts and APIs CAN for all your help. Mabel, you are fantastic. Thank you for everything that you did, and to our incredible interpreters, Anna, Terry, and Gigi. So Diana, I can't thank you enough for inviting me, and I thank you for all of your hard and tireless work in putting this together. So take us home, please.
Thank you, Leverett. I can't add much more for thank yous, but I think we've all learned a lot. This was a great forum, and don't forget to vote November 2nd. Thank you, everybody, for all your hard work, and have a great evening. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.